The East Central Region Chapter's 30 by 30 Committee invites and welcomes all employers to participate, and thank you for attending this 30 by 30 employer awareness session. Let's kick this off with some informal introductions. Please feel free to enter a short introduction of your name, the company you represent, and office location into the chat if you'd like to. At this time, I'd like to pass this on to our next presenter, Sarah. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcia. Good evening, everyone. I'm Sarah Ayub, a committee member for 30 by 30 Initiative. Before we get started, I will acknowledge the land that we reside on. While we meet on a virtual platform today, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the importance of the lands we each call a home. We do this to reaffirm our commitment and responsibility in improving relationships between nations and to improving our own understanding of local Indigenous peoples and their cultures. The land on which we are meeting is the traditional territory of many nations, both recorded and unrecorded, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, and the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now many diverse First Nation, Inuit, and Métis people. I also acknowledge that the is covered by Treaty 13 signed with the Mississaugas of the Credit and the Williams Treaty signed by the multiple Mississaugas and Chippewa bands. Next slide, please. Welcome everybody to our first Engineers Canada 30 by 30 Initiative session. The importance of this session is for all our employers to be aware of chronic underrepresentation of women in engineering profession. Women account for half the population and yet are underrepresented. Employers play a very important role in the licensing process. If a woman does not have any experience, they don't qualify for their license. PEO mandates that a license is required to ensure duty of care to the public in practice of engineering. PEO 30 by 30 is an initiative for Ontario to regulate and to ensure that engineering profession reflects the public it serves in. I will now pass it on to Kartiga to explain our online etiquette. Kartiga?
Thank you, Sarah. So before we get started, I want to quickly go over some of the online etiquettes with everyone today. I will be the Zoom operator for today's event. If you have any questions and issues, please feel free to connect through the chat. We will now quickly go over the Zoom online etiquette. Please ensure your mic is on mute when you are not speaking. Please keep the space safe and confidential. The chat can be used to engage or ask questions. I will be monitoring the chat. There will be a Q&A session period at the end, so please feel free to use the chat for any inquiries or questions. Please raise your hand or use the chat if you wish to speak. For the last item, please note that the session will be recorded, but not the breakout sessions. We would also like everyone to, if you have time, please rename yourself with your company name to help identify. This will help us out when we divide into breakout rooms. So now I want to hand it back to Sarah to continue with the presentation.
Thanks, Kartiga. Next slide, please. So East Central Region 30 by 30 consists of the following active members as shown on the slide. The chapter's members are listed on the slide over here. The committee members include, can you go to the next slide, please? The committee members include York, Lake Ontario, Scarborough, Willowdale or Thornhill, East Toronto, and Simcoe Muskoka chapters. Next slide, please. I now welcome Christian Bellini, who is our current president and vice chair of PEO 30 by 30 task force member, PEO council liaison, and engineers board of director. Helen Wojcinski and Tracy Karuna is also on the call with us. Helen is chair of PEO 30 by 30 task force and former member of Engineers Canada Equitable Participation in Engineering Committee. Tracy is manager of PEO Engineering Interns Program. Both Helen and Tracy will be here to answer any questions at the end of this presentation. I will now pass it on to Christian for a few words. Christian?
Unmute myself first. Thanks very much, Sarah. Good evening, all. I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome you to this 30 by 30 session. My name is Christian Bellini, and I'm a structural engineer. I'm a partner at Blackwell Structural Engineers, and this year I'm also the president of Professional Engineers Ontario. In particular, I'd like to welcome all of the employer representatives who are here tonight. You can play a key role in us achieving our 30 by 30 objective, which is to raise the number of newly licensed female engineers to 30% by the year 2030. The 30 by 30 initiative was launched by Engineers Canada back in 2011. Engineers Canada is the national association which supports the 12 provincial and territorial engineering regulators. Engineers Canada is not a regulator itself. Regulation of engineering in Canada falls under the provincial jurisdiction, but it does work on behalf of all the provinces to provide a uniform national response to engineering regulatory issues. So I've mentioned a couple of important themes so far. First, the 30 by 30 is a national initiative, and we are doing our part here in Ontario to support it, but it is Canada-wide. Two, the 30 by 30 initiative is at least in part a regulatory issue. We do need to study our regulatory structures and processes at PEO to ensure that they do not provide systemic barriers to female representation in the profession. And to this end, we have started a study that we may talk about more a bit later too. And three, the 30 by 30 initiative is at its heart about licensing. It's about that last step after education and experience to becoming an engineer. So the reason I'm so pleased to see you in the room today is really related to that last point. One of the key requirements to getting an engineering license is experience. And that's where you, the engineering employers, come in. You provide the employment opportunities for our graduate engineers to meet that last licensure requirement. Our profession seriously lags the other major professions in addressing the significant underrepresentation of women. Where great strides have been made in the legal and medical professions, to name a few as an example, we have not made significant inroads in engineering. The aim of this initiative is to bring real, tangible change to our profession. You will have heard, or will hear, plenty of evidence about how diverse workplaces enhance productivity and innovation, and about how including women engineers is not only the right thing to do for society, but is also good for business. As an employer of engineers myself, I see this every day. You will also know that getting to 30 by 30 is not going to happen all by itself. It requires intention on all our parts. And that's one of the reasons why we're here tonight. These sessions are intended to help introduce you to the 30 by 30 initiative, but also to spark knowledge and information sharing on how we can achieve these 30 by 30 objectives. What better way than to fill the room with engineers and their colleagues? Engineers are problem solvers at heart. So I hope you enjoyed tonight's session and come away with a better understanding of the 30 by 30 initiative, its objectives, and that you're energized to be part of its success. I want to really thank all the organizers of this event. They put a lot of time and energy into it, and they are the reason why we're going to see success at 30 by 30. Thank you again for being here today.
Thank you, Christian. Next slide, please. For our agenda today, we'll have equity in engineering. This slide will explain on why equity is important for profession of engineering. Employer examples are best practices. This will include breakout sessions, PEO 30 by 30 metrics, and next steps on where we should be going next. I will now pass it on to Liza for equity in engineering. Liza?
My name is Lisa Shepherd, and I will be speaking to equity in engineering, as Sharon just mentioned, and also to the overall importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion in continuously improving and sustaining the profession. The 30 by 30 initiative speaks specifically to achieving gender parity in the profession. So moving on to the Jamboard brainstorming session, a link will be provided to you in the chat to access the Jamboard. There is the question that you can see on the slide that speaks to some of the barriers that female engineers face in the workplace. If you could please access the chat, and the stickies are on the left of the screen. Please feel free to use the sticky notes. And the question again is, what are some barriers that female engineers face in the workplace? Feel free to jot your responses down. This is your opportunity to share your thoughts and your experiences in terms of what's happening in the workplace today. So we see lack of mentorship and lack of confidence, as an example, lack of representation in senior management. Any further thoughts? Are people getting access to the Jamboard, by the way? And if you are on a mobile, you'll need to download the app. We've got a couple of minutes just to get through this session to warm ourselves up to these thoughts and ideas. So please feel free to jump in. Remember, the sticky notes is on the left of the screen. Imposter syndrome. Any further thoughts?
The
Okay.
link is just in the Zoom chat for everyone. All participants are free to add in.
So again, yes, if you are on a mobile phone, you'll need to download the app. You see pay equity. Okay, I think we'll just keep moving on. There will be an opportunity later on for further discussions on this topic. Thank you. So why is equity important? Equity is widely understood to be a marker of economic and social success for organizations and companies. Equity in engineering means engaging the best minds of the profession, including women who make up half of the population. Increased equity and inclusivity within the engineering workforce provides significant benefits to Canadians. And Engineers Canada strongly believes that equity and inclusion within engineering will ensure the sustainability of the profession and its ability to understand the public it serves. Other licensed professions such as law and medicine have already attained gender parity, but however, chronic underrepresentation continues to portray the engineering profession unfavorably to the public. And so Engineers Canada is working with the provincial and territorial engineering regulators to ensure that the engineering profession reflects the demographics of Canadian society and continues to meet the needs of the Canadian economy, both now and well into the future. And so why do women matter in this picture? A 2017 McKinsey report shows that Canadian progress towards gender equality has stalled over the last 20 years. Although 53% of the degree holders in Canada are females, women are a minority of the corporate leaders. And calculations show that Canadian provinces could add between 4 to 9% to their GDP by advancing gender parity. Next slide, please. So on that note, we will go into our first 2-minute poll question of the evening. And so in Ontario, what percentage of newly licensed engineers identify as women? Is it 8%, 17%, 24%, or 30%? So feel free to start submitting your responses. So hopefully everyone is taking this opportunity to respond. I usually like these poll questions. They're fun little activities to do. Do we have the results coming yet? So there we go. 65% of us did get the response correct. It is 17% of newly licensed engineers in Ontario who identify as women. So thank you. And moving forward. So we have just touched on the latest research and business case for gender equity. And where do we currently stand with women in engineering? Engineers Canada is defining women as those who identify as women. And so nationally, only 18.1% of newly licensed engineers were women in 2018. And this percentage has stagnated since 2016. Ontario has a high, if not the highest number of professional engineers of the provinces in Canada. And so our numbers make a significant difference to achieving the 30% goal across Canada. And as we just saw through the poll question, 17% of newly licensed engineers in Ontario are women. Clearly, we have more work to do. The 30% goal will be unattainable unless we engage key stakeholders like yourselves along the pathway to licensure. Next slide, please. And just to give you an idea of what's happening in universities and at the undergraduate level, this slide shows the percentage of women in each discipline of engineering at the undergraduate level. And what is important from the graph is that the disciplines with the lowest percentage of women also have the highest number of students enrolled. So again, the lowest percentage of women have the highest number of students enrolled. So to achieve this 30% goal, more women will need to enroll in these programs. The good news, though, is that several Ontario universities have close to or over 30% women enrolled in first-year engineering. And so we do expect these numbers to start increasing over the coming years. What is important is that these female undergraduates pursue their licensure upon graduation. And also important is the role that employers play in recruiting and providing the necessary experiences required for these graduates. And as we've jumped onto the next slide, this slide is a very powerful, it clearly demonstrates the trend of females leaking, so to speak, out of the system from a science, physics, and engineering perspective. Of critical importance is the red box area that shows a ratio of 20 to 80 females versus males graduating from engineering. But then this drops to a ratio of 11 versus 89 of females to males who actually become licensed. And so this is clearly a call to action for employers to act as the duct tape, so to stop that leakage for graduates and for females to become licensed after graduation. Females are needing to overcome a great number of barriers to reach the same level. And it's not necessarily related to technical capability or work ethics or education. Next slide, please. And so what is being done to address this persistent inequity in the engineering profession? Possibly how the context of engineering is portrayed and what we need in the profession to best serve and protect the public's interests needs to be revisited. Also, perhaps the engineering profession needs to be welcoming of women's perspectives on the impacts and purpose of our work. And with all of the complex, wicked challenges facing society, requiring multidisciplinary and multidimensional solutions, women are needed in our profession as valuable resources for employees of engineers and should be encouraged and supported in pursuing licensure. And so the key question then that has to be asked as engineering professionals and as employers is whether we are attracting the diversity of people in the profession that we need in terms of background, interest, and capacity if we're not fully tapping into women, and which is half of the talent pool. So a very key takeaway, again, is are we attracting the diversity of people in the profession that we do need?
I'm Nanda Lewin. I have a question for you, a poll question. Next slide. This is poll question number 2. What percentage of engineers need to be women in order to bring about self-sustaining change? And the possible answers are 15%, 75%, 30%, or 50%. I'll give you a few seconds to answer that. So what percentage of engineers need to be women in order to bring about self-sustaining change? Please enter your answer now. Do we have the results of the poll? Oh, good. 60% say 30%, and that would be right. It is true. The 30% figure is widely accepted as the threshold for critical mass for self-sustaining change. 30 by 30 is an Engineers Canada initiative to promote and increase equity in engineering, which means engaging the best minds of the profession, including women. By increasing the number of women in the profession, we will also be enhancing the diversity of our profession by tapping into the full talent pool of the entire population. Engineers Canada's Strategic Plan 2018-2021 prioritizes the recruitment, retention, and professional development of women in the engineering profession. Engineers Canada is working to increase the representation of women in engineering, primarily through its 30 by 30 initiative. While the objective is that at least 30% of newly licensed engineers will be women, the board expanded the initiative to include retention and professional development of women in the profession. However, if we start with recruitment, that should begin to address professional development, at least at the early stages of women's careers, and lead to women's retention in the profession. Next slide. While a small group of task force members in PEO can implement the 30 by 30 action plan, it will take each of the key stakeholder groups to endorse the initiative and sign up for actions that fall within their responsibility or sphere of influence. PEO, including the chapters, of course, has its own obligation in achieving the 30% goal as a regulator overseeing the licensing process, and to lead by example by examining its own internal operations. Next slide. Why is becoming a license more important, important for women? Licensure is the mark of a professional. It is an assurance of dedication, skill, and quality, and more importantly, of public safety. Just like a law license defines a lawyer, and a medical license defines a doctor, an engineering license tells the public you have mastered the critical elements of your profession and that you have a duty of care to the public. It demonstrates your commitment to the highest standards of engineering practice. These are enshrined in the Professional Engineers Act, Code of Ethics, and speak to the notion of stewardship. Ensuring women are part of a community of licensed engineers means including their perspectives and ensuring their full involvement in the profession. Next slide. So this is a quote from Bob Doney, who is who was our president, former PEO president, and he's now a member of the 30 by 30 task force. And he says, "We are not just a regulator of the practice of professional engineering, we are a self-governing regulator. We have been granted that privilege by the people of the province because of the trust they have placed in us to regulate the profession on their behalf. Self-regulation is a privilege and obligation which we must take the utmost care to respect. The 30 by 30 initiative is admittedly a stopgap measure towards gender parity, but it allows us the opportunity for critical self-reflection to examine the underlying reasons why our profession is not attracting the best of the best women in the same numbers as men. Society would expect no less. And again, that's by Bob Doney, the former president of PEO, speaking on 30 by 30. Next slide. So this next slide is interesting. This graphic shows PEO's role in the spectrum, which is on the licensing portion, but this image highlights other keystone milestone areas in engineering. Other groups may target other outreach areas, such as universities. Engineers Canada's new strategic priority is focused on this end of the spectrum. And you can see it in the red circle. In keeping with regulators' mandate, our main focus on this engineering continuum will initially be from engineering graduates to women obtaining their license with an emphasis on what takes place for women in their pathway to licensure. By focusing on this first stage in their engineering careers and cultivating a welcoming culture, this should lead to future opportunities for career development in the practice of engineering, advancement, retention, and ultimately the leadership positions. Employers of engineers are a vital stakeholder along this pathway to licensure in recruiting women engineering graduates, both domestic and international, valuing the engineering license and providing them with the necessary experience requirements to obtain their license as a professional engineer. Next slide. Women cannot solve this problem on their own. The underrepresentation of women has to be owned by the entire engineering profession. And to speak further about this, I want to introduce you to my colleague, Karthika Devasilan, who will speak to you on that topic. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nanda, for that insightful information. Our next session will focus on the proposed actions for PEO and stakeholders. Next slide, please. PEO must lead by example and examine its own internal operations. The primary action plan involves reviewing the licensing process towards unconscious bias and unintentional barriers for women, support from PEO with programs such as LAP, the Licensing Assistance Program, and internal engineering graduate bridging programs and features and publications, encouraging women engineers to be involved in PEO committees and council positions, as well as tracking internal 30 by 30 progress and providing annual reports to PEO Council. Next slide, please. The next major stakeholder towards this initiative, as mentioned before, are the universities. The universities play a key role bridging the path between students and PEO. A few highlights of their actions include recruitment efforts striving for 30% target in first years, teaching curriculum such as connection to social impacts, and PEO collaboration support for chapter programs. Next slide, please. Finally, we are on to the action of employers such as yourselves can take. These can include recruitment targets and being aware of unconscious bias in any selection process. Set the tone for expectations from the top. Acknowledge the historical imbalance and indifference. Change from a numbers perspective. For example, instead of so many years of experience, move on to a competency approach. The next section we can look at is professional development. Development in-house programs utilize PEO's existing LAP program, as mentioned before, form a mentorship, be it informal or formal, to cultivate a welcoming environment. We have seen examples of buddy systems in this regard. Be mindful in assignment selection, as mentioned before, and providing women opportunities in both engineering and leadership skills, which will position them for licensure and advancement. Next slide, please. Along with the recruitment and professional development, we have further actions employers can utilize. We have retention objectives such as demonstrate possible career paths with examples in leadership roles, conduct a gender audit, incorporate diversity and inclusion education to all employees, address common inclusivity roadblocks such as microaggression, biases, imposter syndrome, and pay equity, interrupt backlash and debunk myths. For example, a candidate only got the job because they are women. Employers can also establish and track their own 30 by 30 metrics. Other actions can also include inviting PEO to your workplace. We can host lunch and learns. We can help set up programs, run workshops and mentorship guidance for professional engineers. PEO can also provide support for this initiative. You can reach out to PEO for further detail. At the end of this presentation, we have resources provided that can be reviewed. Now I'm going to hand it off to Sharon, who's going to go through our breakout session.
Thank you, Karthika. So we wanted this session to be very interactive, and as such, we've included a breakout session within this awareness session. So it will be lasting approximately 10 to 15 minutes, and you'll all be placed into groups of 4 to 5, one of which the members will be part of the 30 by 30 East Central Region Committee. And here are just some guiding questions on how we want to discuss with your group, how employers can contribute to this 30 by 30 initiative. And some guiding questions are, what factors are important for achieving gender equity? How do you formally or informally introduce change into the workplace? How can these factors become scalable, transferable, and transformative? And what metrics can be used to track efficacy of these factors? So at the end of the discussion, we'll get a warning once time is running out, but we ask that the facilitator, so that's the 30 by 30 members, kind of jot down the main points of the discussion within your group into the Google form, so you have a documentation of that. As such, please since we have some time, please take the first 3 or so minutes to really introduce yourself, give a brief for each member of the breakout session. Make sure you introduce to each other and network with each other. Let each other know your name and which company you're representing. Now I'm just going to ask Karthika to now open the breakout room so that everyone can start their discussions.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back.
I don't know about
Hi,
other
everyone.
groups, but my group was only able to get 2 questions. We had longer discussions for the 2 questions.
That's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
It shows how insightful the questions were.
My apologies to Katrina because her thought got cut off.
It's all good. It's all good. Thank you.
Miraj, would you please share the deck once again so we can?
Yeah, I'm on it.
Thank you. Well, thanks everyone for participating so actively in the breakout session. Seems like everyone had very insightful questions. Don't worry if you didn't there were a lot of questions. They were just to guide the discussion so that it was fruitful. The goal was we rather you have done a better quality discussion than get through a greater number of questions. Now that we kind of start off that breakout session and set the tone, we wanted to just ask an optional poll question. And obviously there's no right answer for this one, but how many female engineers does your respective company have in management or senior leadership positions? That this is in terms of absolute number. So 0 to 5, 5 to 10, 10 to 20, or 20 plus. We're just going to give everyone a second to answer this. Again, it's optional. We just want to see in the same vein as the discussion where everyone is at now, the starting points. And then after this one, we will soon talk about what further actions and measuring and other metrics, which my colleagues will talk about. So the results, as you can see here, there are many, 35% that's 0 to 5, 6% is from 5 to 10. Very interesting numbers. From 10 to 20 is 24% of the answers, and 20 plus is has 35. So there's a wide spectrum here. Of course, depending on the company size, is different percentages, but it's great to hear everyone's responses. So now that the poll question is complete, I will now turn it over to my colleague Enoch to present the PEO 30 by 30 metrics section of the presentation.
Thank you, Sharon. So thank you again for attending this employers awareness session. Again, my name is Enoch, and during the breakout session, we were talking about the use of metrics to track the efficacy of achieving the 30% by 30 goal. And as you know, we engineers all love numbers. So it's important for us to have a look at the metrics and see where we are right now and how we're doing at the moment. But before we get started, let me give you a bit of a background as to how these metrics came about. So in 2019, PEO established some baseline metrics for the year 2018. Now, that was an important first step for PEO to demonstrate some visible leadership and commitment to the 30 by 30 initiative. Now, these baseline metrics were presented to the PEO Council at the November 2019 meeting, and that started on the annual reporting on the progress made on the 30 by 30 initiative. Then in September 2020, PEO hosted its inaugural annual 30 by 30 check-in with over 50 participants. Now, this event is held every September to collectively measure the stakeholders' metrics in achieving the 30% goal. So we'll be hosting the second annual check-in later this month, which will be on the 28th from 7 to 9 p.m. And we'll be extending the invitation to the participants of this awareness session. So we hope that you'll be able to join us. So please put it on your calendar. So we're going to look at these the next slides. We're going to look at it's going to provide you some of the latest metrics that were shared last year at the PEO Council during the November meeting. So let's first take a look at the licensing metrics that we are looking at here. So the percentage of applying for licenses who are women has been stagnant. Has been stagnant at 19% from 2018 and 2019, according to the Canadian Engineering Accreditation Board. Next slide, please. And then the percentage of those who obtain the license, who are women, have also been stagnant at 18% between 2018 and 2019. Before we go any further, if I just wanted to go back just to give you a little bit of background as well, the data that you're looking at right now are based on the year-end results for 2018 to 2019. So we don't have the 2020 data yet, but the data for 2020 will be available for by November 2021. So this is just to give you a bit of a background there. And then next slide, please. And then the percentage of EITs who are engineering interns who are women was at 22% between 2018 and 2019. So remember that earlier in the slides, Lisa was talking about how the percentage of women obtaining the PNGs have been stagnant since 2016. And these are numbers showing that, yes, they have been stagnant for a certain percentage. So the next slide, please. But the percentage of those engineering interns participating in the licensure assistance program, which we call the LAB program for women, is at 22% in 2019. Now, Kathika was talking about the LAB program a little bit earlier. So let me just refresh your memory a little bit. The LAB program is basically a mentorship program with PEO, where current PNGs are paired up with engineering interns or EITs to guide the EITs through the journey of their professional experience to gain the engineering experience needed to obtain the licensure. But how successful is this particular program? Let's take a look at the next page. As you can see that the percentage of EIT participating in the LAB program and also obtaining licenses who are women have gone up significantly from 14% at 2018 to 28% in 2019. Now, I need to give you a bit of a context there because the 14% in 2018 represents about 8 women out of 59 who obtained the PNGs during that year. And the 28% in 2019 represents 5 women out of 18 who obtained the PNGs. So the total number of PNGs, the new PNGs have gone down, but the percentage of women who are new PNGs have gone up significantly. So that shows that the lab program really works, and it works very successfully. Next slide, please. So next, let's take a look at the university metrics. And it's important to look at these metrics because we were talking about earlier how the beginning of the engineering journey starts at university. So it's important to see where we are at universities and where the university students that we are getting. So for engineering undergrad, during the undergrad program, the first year university students who are women at 26%. And after 4 or 5 years in the undergrad program, those who are graduating for engineering students have gone down to 22% as women. Next slide, please. And for postgrads, which include master's and PhD programs, 27% of those in graduate studies are women. And for engineering faculty, which include professors, only 17% of them are women. Next slide, please. Now let's take a look at the employer metrics. And this is where all of you come in. And this is the reason why we're here. Let's take a look at where we are at the present time. Now, there are 3 specific metrics that we are talking about. The first one is the percentage of new engineering recruits who are women. Okay, so that is really an important metric to have. And the second one is the percentage of women engineering recruits who obtain the licenses. And the third one being the percentage of women engineers in leadership positions such as C-suite, VP, director, manager, etc. And we need more information in order to complete this metric and to have better information. And the information that I am going to show you is what we have so far with our current employer champions. And we're hoping that we can get more data points for these charts. If we can just quickly go back to the first, the previous slide, thank you. And all the data collected will be confidential and anonymous. Now, the metrics that we are looking at here, the 3 metrics, they are just suggested metrics. But the first one, the percentage of new engineering recruits who are women, is the most important one because this is the start of the journey for the professional experience for the engineering interns. So this is very important. Ideally, all employers should adopt the same 3 metrics for the purpose of consistency to collectively measure the progress towards the 30 by 30 goal. And for the second one, the PEO can provide the employers with the numbers. And obviously, the third one will be coming from you, the employer as well. So it is important to understand too is that the metrics, the information that will be coming from the employers will be kept confidential, anonymous, and aggregated. So what that means is that the information that you provide to us will not be reported individually, just your company, but it will be combined with the statistics from other companies as well, so that we can see the collective percentages of that particular stakeholder group. So the information that you provide will be, once again, confidential and anonymous. And we need definitely more information in order to get a clearer picture on what's going on. So let's take a look at what we have so far. Next slide, please. So the first metric that we were talking about the percentage of new engineering recruits who are women, is now at 29% in 2019. Now, that number only includes 2 employers as of 2020. So only 2. We do not have enough information on that. And we definitely need more data points to paint a better picture on how we are doing at the moment. There are another 7 employers have expressed their interest in 30 by 30 and may become a champion in the future. So this is only based on 2 employers. The next slide, please. So for the second metric, the percentage of women engineering recruits who obtain the licensure is at 26% as of 2019. Again, this is based on only 2 employers as of 2020. So we still need more information. And the next slide, please. And the third metric of the percentage of women PNGs in leadership position that we were talking about earlier has gone up from 14% in 2018 to 19% in 2019. But then again, that is only based on 2 employers. So we need a lot more employers. We need a lot more champions to join us so that we get a clearer picture on the existing situation so that we can see where we need to do in order to improve. So I'm gonna send it back to Sharon to talk about what you can do to help us and to be part of this initiative.
Thanks, Enoch. So as Enoch, just to reiterate what Enoch said, our call to action for employers is listed in the following slide, which is to become a PEO 30 by 30 champion. As a PEO 30 by 30 champion, you will develop action items and actions based on the PEO action plan and share best practices with your peers. You will develop the 3 metrics, and that is the 3 that Enoch has mentioned before, which is the percentage of engineering crews who are women, percentage of women who get their engineering license, and percentage of women engineers in senior leadership positions. So tracking the female engineers, the women in engineering through their career journey from beginning to later on in senior management. And again, they're to be measured and recorded on an annual basis as recommended by the PEO 30 by 30 task force, because we have to, unless you measure, you don't know how much progress you are making. And lastly, as Enoch mentioned as well, agree to be part of the larger collective effort to track and commit to the progress being made on achieving the 30 by 30 goal as a profession. As an aggregate, all the information will be confidential. If you can go to the next slide, please. I will now turn it over to my colleague Manraj to explain how to become a champion right here, right now. Manraj?
Yep, I'm here. Sorry, I was on mute, which I think we should all know by now, living in this Zoom world. So, how to become a champion? So, definitely take the time to reach out to Tracy. Again, a wealth of knowledge, but also see how you can engage your local PEO chapter as well, because all of our chapters are working heavily to be able to achieve this 30 by 30 goal. And with that, we have loads of resources that you, your teams, and your entire organization can leverage. Everything from more information on the 30 by 30 task force and the action plan, as well as the SP3 environmental scan that's been done. We have a lot of employer examples. So we have one listed here from the MTO, as well as a case study about meeting the diversity challenges. So all of these resources will be sent out to you all, so definitely look forward to those in your inbox. We've also got a document of best practices by Dr. Sonia Kang. So a lot of research and recommendations that came out of here are super useful, and you'll be able to actually implement. It's tangible things you can implement in your organization. And everyone loves a lot of extra reading work. I know I do, so definitely check out all of these amazing resources that we've got here. And PEO Next Steps. So the PEO chapter hosted awareness and action planning sessions. Those will continue for the rest of this year for up until 2022. And then the annual check-in, which we discussed a little bit, that'll be in September 2021. And then a formal endorsement of stakeholders as PEO 30 by 30 champions. You can look forward to that next year. So that's really all we had going on today. I really want to thank everyone. We'd like to open the floor to questions. I'm going to stop sharing so we can see everyone's faces. And if you have a question, please raise your hand in the Zoom chat, or you can send us a message and we'll be happy to answer any of the questions, or and we've got a great team here to tackle them as well. So feel free to put anything in the chat or just to virtually raise your hand.
So just to reiterate, the slide deck will be circulated to everyone as well as the recording of everything. Tracy and Christian, we were very fortunate to have them on the call today. So feel free to utilize the opportunity to ask them questions as well. Tracy will definitely, as her email is listed on the slide, she will be your direct contact to sign up as a PEO 30x30 champion.
Hi there, this is Katrina Fraser. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Hi, Katrina.
Yeah. Okay. I don't actually have a question, but I just wanted to comment and say that I think this was a really great session, and I'm really grateful to Marcia for suggesting it to us at our Wood organization. I think it's been really informative, and it's great to see, and kind of aligns with some of the goals that our company has started to set and that we look at very closely. So this is really, really great. I hope that you guys, you know, we're going to go back and look at how Wood can get more involved with being a champion, because I think it's really important. But yeah, I just hope that you continue to push these types of topics and really get out there, because more people need to learn and think about this and get it out there. So I really, really do appreciate this session. It's been really informative. Thank you.
I think if I can maybe just share something that came out of our breakout room. We talked about, not only is this a challenge from the HR and TA side to actually get that diverse talent pool in, but also how do we retain that talent as well? How are we offering everything from creating safe spaces? How are we offering a mentorship program? So to actually, you know, it's great to get diverse talent in, but to be able to hone that talent and build them up and create a culture shift, I think that's where a lot of the challenges that I see in the organizations that I've been with sit. So I don't know if anyone had any thoughts on that either.
Yeah, I would say that that's one of the reasons why when Engineers Canada was putting its strategic plan together, it created the SP3, which is not just about 30x30, which is a component of it. That's getting women into the engineering profession, but it's about retention. And that is as significant a problem. You know, there's a lot of people who start their careers in engineering and then leave, and that's one of the things that we really need to be able to address. And that is definitely that definitely falls in the employer's playground. You know, that's where you can make a really big difference if we work on those sorts of things. And I think that's where these types of sessions where we can share knowledge together are really helpful, because it's going to accelerate the way that we advance.
Sorry.
I just wanted to remind everyone who joined late to leave your name and your company name or your information in the chat box.
We will be sending out the recording as well as the slide deck to all those who have signed up through Eventbrite for this Zoom session, which should be everyone who has access to this Zoom session. So no worries if you had popped in late, you should be able to catch the session, the part of the entirety of the session, the presentation portion within the YouTube video as well. If we don't have any comments, I believe we can just wrap up the session. Thanks everyone for attending today. We look forward to you all working with us and becoming a PEO 30x30 champion. We're really grateful for the time that you have spent today to attend this session and to have these fruitful discussions with with us and with your peers as well from different companies who are here. We're really looking forward to working with you all as employers to reach this 30 by 30 or if exceed it if possible. So have a wonderful night. Thank you again on behalf of the entire Professional Engineers Ontario East Central Region 30 by 30 Committee. Feel free to reach out to Tracy as well as like any of the local chapter members regarding this initiative. We're happy to support and answer any questions or direct you to someone who is able to answer those questions if we're not able to. Thanks again and have a good evening.
Thank you
very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Have a good night.